Hey folks, this is Rhykker with a Diablo 3 patch 2.6.5 Season 17 Demon Hunter build guide. In this video, we'll go over the gear and the skills that you need to rock this Legacy of Nightmares build. Now, what we're presenting here is a rapid fire build using the newly buffed rapid fire support items. And we'll also cover seasonal and non-seasonal variants, because in Season 17, we have now the Season of Nightmares. Everyone gets for free the bonus of the Legacy of Nightmares set, which means that for every ancient or primal piece of gear that you have equipped, you gain a buff to your damage and your toughness, so long as you are not benefiting from any other set bonuses. So let's begin with an overview of the gear that we will want. So first off, this is a rapid fire build. Rapid fire is a channeling skill, so we are taking the Mantle of Channeling. While channeling rapid fire, we're going to deal 25% increased damage and take 25% reduced damage. For our Helm, we'll be taking the Visage of Goons. This way our Vengeance will be benefiting from two separate runes, Dark Heart and our Rune of Choice. This effectively is an item that helps our toughness because the Dark Heart rune is a defensive rune. Next, for our amulet, we have here the S of Johann. This is going to group enemies. The more tightly packed enemies are together, the more we're going to be damaging multiple enemies at once, the more rapidly we will be killing them. Now you can instead go with a Hellfire Amulet to squeeze in another passive. The Demon Hunter has some excellent choices. For our gloves, we're taking the Mage Fist Gauntlets. This is a fire build. This gives us a boost to fire damage. Next, we're taking the Cinder Coat for yet more fire damage. This also reduces the resource cost of fire skills, but that won't really be much of a problem, and we'll explain why in a little bit. For our bracers, we're going to go with the Strong Arm bracers, assuming we want to go for the maximum damage variant of this build. But that said, you have two other options. One would be to go with Ancient Parthan Defenders instead, but another still would be to simply go with Nemesis bracers. And that'll affect what rune we take on Fan of Knives. More on that in a bit. Next, we're taking the Hellcat Waistguard to turbo buff our grenades, and we'll be taking the Grenades rune on Rapid Fire. The Rapid Fire Grenades variant really is the one able to put out the most damage for greater rift pushing. You could make a Rapid Fire build that uses a different rune, but it will be significantly weaker. That said, it should still be able to clear easier content. For our pants, we want to take the Swampland Waders, for the simple fact that they are the only pants that can roll with elemental damage. These pants are impossible to get on a Demon Hunter. You need to get them on a Witch Doctor, or get a buddy who's running a Witch Doctor to get some for you. Once you have them, you can then reforge them to turn them into dexterity-based items. Next, we'll be taking a Convention of Elements to squeeze out more damage. We'll be taking a Unity for more toughness, although that's only if you're playing solo, and only if you're also going to put a Unity on your follower and give your follower the token that renders him invulnerable. These three items together have the effect of doubling your toughness. The third ring we'll want to get is the Elusive Ring for yet more damage reduction. Now between these three, equip the best two you have and cube the worst. Now, if you're playing non-season, in order to run a Legacy of Nightmares build, you're going to have to sacrifice 2 ring slots for the Legacy of Nightmares rings. The first ring to sacrifice will be the Unity. The next will depend on whether you want more damage or more toughness. If you want more damage, then sacrifice the Elusive Ring. If you want more toughness, sacrifice the Convention of Elements. For our boots, we'll go with Illusory Boots. These aren't critical to the build, but they do help with our mobility, particularly because we are not taking Vault. That said, definitely prioritize getting well-rolled boots over Illusory Boots. For our weapon, we'll be equipping a Dawn. This heavily reduces the cooldown on Vengeance and will allow us to maintain Vengeance 100% of the time. The other weapon we'll be equipping is the Wojani Assaulter in our cube. This is one of the key items for Rapid Fire, and it's what really encourages us to sit in place and let that Rapid Fire channel and channel and channel up to 30 stacks for max damage. For our quiver, we'll want the Sin Seekers. This entirely removes the channeling cost of Rapid Fire. This is what allows us to maintain our buff from the Aquila Cuirass, which we'll have in our cube, and this is what makes it such that we will not run into resource issues. With the Aquila Cuirass, as long as we are near max resource, we take 50% less damage. Now for our gems, in our Helm, we're going to want a diamond for the cooldown reduction. there's a couple cooldown reduction breakpoints that we're going to want to reach. For our chest and pants, we'll go with diamonds for more toughness or emeralds for more damage. For our legendary gems, we want a Bane of the Trapped. This will make us deal more damage against crowd-controlled enemies. We'll take either a Bane of the Stricken or a Bane of the Powerful. If you're pushing higher greater rifts and it's taking you very long to kill the Rift Guardian, pop in a Bane of the Stricken. If you're doing fast content, select a Bane of the Powerful instead. Then lastly, once again for higher greater rifts, we're taking a Pain Enhancer in order to gain a bunch of attack speed stacks for bleeding enemies within range of us. Now this only works if you're able to gather a whole lot of enemies near you while bleeding them. At lower difficulties, when enemies die too quickly, you're not benefiting from the Pain Enhancer, so if you're not going to benefit from it, you could instead use an Esoteric Alteration for more toughness. Alright, we'll come back to look at exactly what we want on every piece of gear in a bit. Let's take a look first at the skills. This build entails sitting in place and channeling our rapid fire like a Gatling gun that shoots grenades. Because of that, we're going for a number of other items that are going to help us sustain our position without dying. For instance, Vengeance side cannons. Now, Vengeance is a buff that we will maintain 100% of the time. This will give us 40% increased damage, and the side cannons rune will give us some additional sustain through heals. We're also naturally getting the Dark Heart rune thanks to our Visage of Goons, which gives us 50% damage reduction. Next, we're taking Shadow Power Gloom. At the cost of 14 discipline for 5 seconds, we are going to take less damage and gain more life per hit. And we're going to help manage our discipline through Preparation Focused Mind. Gain 45 discipline over 15 seconds. Proper management of Shadow Power versus Preparation is critical to surviving with this build. Next, we're taking Companion, Wolf Companion. This will give us a button to press when we want to deal a bit more damage. Bust that out when dealing with elites. And then lastly, we're taking Fan of Knives, and the rune will depend. If we're using Strong Arm Bracers or Ancient Parthian Defenders, we are going with Fan of Daggers to stun enemies. We're going to want to have 100% uptime on our Fan of Knives. An alternative choice is to go with Bladed Armor, gaining additional toughness for 6 seconds. If we go with this, we want to maintain 100% uptime on this effect. For our passives, we're going to take Cull the Weak, more damage against slowed or chilled enemies. It's basically the same thing that our Bane of the Trapped does, so these two pair excellently together. Next, we're taking Ambush, more damage against enemies who are near max health. Next, Grenadier. If you're running a grenades build, this is a must. And then lastly, Numbing Traps as a defensive option will be making enemies deal less damage to us. If you have a Hellfire Amulet, then as an additional passive, you can take Awareness for that extra life. Now the playstyle here very much revolves around being afforded the time to sit and channel and deal your damage. You're going to want enemies to clump up and come to you. The more enemies are clumped up, the more our grenades are going to be able to do their work. So we want to be able to sit and channel as much as possible, and many of these other skills are all there to help us do that. The Demon Hunter is typically a highly mobile class that rarely sits in place for one moment, so you're going to have to fight your instincts and get yourself to sit there as long as you possibly can without dying, and not be shy to be using all of these powers to allow you to keep sitting and channeling. Alright, let's go back to the gear and exactly what we want on every piece of gear, starting with our shoulders. We're going to want Dexterity, Vitality, Area Damage, and Cooldown Reduction. For permanent uptime on Vengeance, we want 36.6 repeating percent cooldown reduction. For permanent uptime, however, on Fan of Knives Bladed Armor, we need a little bit more. We gotta hit 40% cooldown reduction in order to change that 10 seconds of cooldown into 6 seconds of cooldown. So in our Helm, we want Dex, Crit Chance, Rapid Fire Damage. For our Amulet, we want Fire Damage, Crit Chance, Crit Damage. For our Gloves, Dex, Crit Chance, Crit Damage, Area Damage. For our Chest, Fire, Dex, Vitality. For our Bracers, Fire, Dex, Vitality, and Crit Chance. For our Belt, Dex, Vitality, All Resist, Life Percent. For our Pants, Fire Damage, Dex, Vitality, All Resist. For our Boots, Dex, Vitality, All Resist, Rapid Fire Damage. For our Convention of Elements, Crit Chance, crit damage cooldown. For our Unity, crit chance, crit damage, increased damage versus elites. For our Dawn, dex, cooldown, attack speed. For our Quiver, dex, attack speed, crit chance, cooldown reduction, rapid fire damage. For our Paragon Points, we want to get our total move speed up to 25%, then dump everything into dexterity. For offense, start by hitting your cooldown breakpoints. So that's generally going to mean putting everything into cooldown first, then maintain a global 1 to 10 ratio of crit chance to crit damage, and then eventually max both of these out, then into attack speed. For defense, life, all resist, armor, life regen. For utility, area damage, life per hit, resource cost reduction. And that is going to wrap up this video. But do be sure to have checked out our tier list of the best builds in Season 17. Thanks for watching. Special thanks to my Twitch, Patreon, and now YouTube supporters for making these videos possible. If you like what you see on this channel and want to support the creation of more content, you can consider pledging on Patreon or YouTube and unlocking behind-the-scenes content and monthly virtual hangouts. If you enjoyed this video, please share it, check out these other videos, and subscribe to join Rhykker's Raiders for more Diablo content.